Just wanted to welcome all of you here today for another Spotlight segment with Rocky, who happens to know a lot about reestablishing credit. And I have a number of questions here from people who have questions about credit. The first one is, what happens to you if your car gets repossessed, as far as your credit score?
Well, several things can happen, Dave. A repossession is one of the nastiest things that can happen to you credit-wise. It's like being foreclosed on a house. I mean, not only is do you still have the financial problem of still owing the total amount of money on the vehicle that you now don't have, but you also have to consider the legal ramifications of what is the lender going to do to try and come after you and recoup their loss. They have several options. I mean, they can legally take you to court, sue you, award it a judgment, garnish your wages if your state allows it. They can attach bank accounts. They can even go so far as filing liens on any other personal property you might have, like cars, boats, land, homes. And when you consider that all of this is going to show on your credit report for the next 7.5 years, it's really not worth it.
So a repossession?
A repossession is a really bad thing. I mean, it's something you don't want to do unless you absolutely have to.
Another question that we have is also dealing with some pretty negative things, is how long does it take to fix your credit after a bankruptcy?
It doesn't take that long, really. Now, the bankruptcy is going to show, assuming it's a Chapter 7 where you just walk away, that's going to show on your credit for 10 years. But it's only really going to adversely affect your score for the first 24 months.
Really?
Because credit scores are 90% based on the last 24 months of activity. So if you can go out, and there's lots of them out there, if you can go out and get what I call bad credit cards, they're going to have huge fees. It's probably going to be 50% of what your limit is. Their interest rate is going to be through the roof. But you get those cards, you pay off the fees, and then use them for everyday things that you would normally pay cash for, gas, cigarettes, lunch, whatever. Pay them off in full every month before the due date. You avoid the interest. And all of these cards report to the credit bureaus. In a period of 12 to 24 months, you can increase your credit score 150 points or more just by doing that one thing.
Wow, just that one thing. You know, I think it highlights the fact that credit is something that has to be paid for. Okay, we have a lot of people have a question about what does breaking a lease do to your credit. Sometimes people want to move away for whatever reason and they just break a lease. Will that affect your credit?
It can, yes. It really depends on what the lessor does with it. If it's a small amount, like say you're only talking about 1 month and it's a couple of $100 or $300, you might get lucky and they might just write it off and be done with it. If, however, they go the other way and turn it over to a collection agency, they will post that account to your credit report. It'll show under public records that you have a collection, the amount, and who you owe. Kind of like, you know, any other derogatory credit. You get something like that in the public records section, it's going to be there for 7.5 years. It can cause you to be turned down. Say you go to rent another apartment and they see that, well, you didn't pay for the last one you had. That can cause problems.
And perhaps we should have asked this one to begin with, because everybody wants to know where this whole credit thing came from. What was the origin of the credit scores and FICO and all that?
Well, that's kind of an interesting story. FICO is short for Fair Isaac Company. Fair Isaac Company was invented back in 1956. Now, they didn't do a whole lot at first because nobody knew what a credit score was. Their first customer was the credit card carte blanche because they were the first credit card. They then went on in 1963, I believe, they hooked up with Montgomery Ward. And by 1970, they had established what we know today as the FICO scoring system. And it takes into account several different things. And it worked so well for Montgomery Ward in then knowing, based on FICO's decisions, who to issue a card to and who not to, that everybody in the country uses it now.
And this is something that we carry with us, pluses or minuses.
Pluses or minuses, that's
who we
right.
have. So, does it hurt when somebody looks at your credit? Does it hurt your credit score?
It depends on what kind of inquiry it is. There's two types. There's a soft inquiry, which does not hurt your credit score at all. A soft inquiry can be made by like a potential employer, by an insurance company, by a credit card company that you already have a card with and they're thinking about increasing your credit limit. It could be made by a credit card company that's thinking about offering you a credit card. All they're doing is reviewing your credit. You haven't actually applied for anything. Inquiries like that, while they do show on your report, they do not affect your score at all. Now, a hard inquiry, on the other hand, does. That's when a person actually applies for credit, whether it's a credit card, installment loan, whatever. But it's a minimal effect. You're only talking 2 to 3 points per inquiry. And because of this, there also is a way in the FICO system has been tweaked, because say you want to make a major purchase like a car or a home. Well, you might end up having 8, 9, 10 inquiries on your credit over a 2 or 3 week period while you're in this process. The FICO system recognizes that. They know you're out shopping. So all of those, while they still show on your report, all of those inquiries are lumped together and only actually count as one. So your score only takes one hit.
Okay, and in today's mobile society, a lot of us move from place to place, and I've heard this question quite a bit. What does moving do to your credit score? Does it raise it or lower it, or does it have any effect at all?
Actually, in this country, where you live has no effect whatsoever. Unless you go out and apply for credit somewhere and list your new address on the credit application, the credit bureaus won't even know that you moved. Wow. And they don't care.
And they don't. So that really is a non-player.
That is a non-issue.
Moving will not necessarily affect your credit. I want to thank you, Rocky, for sharing your words of wisdom with us today. In future segments, Rocky will share some more tips for how we can improve our credit scores. Thank you for watching.